The fog settles low tonight, clinging to your boots like quiet hands as you tread across the moor. Heather brushes your ankles, cool and slightly damp, and somewhere in the distance, a nightjar calls once, then goes silent. The path ahead is crooked, almost shy, and barely a trail at all. Just this soft suggestion of stone under moss, like something that used to matter. Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a place that technically shouldn't exist. There are no ruins here, no plaques, no charming boards with names like Ye Old Something. Just space. An odd, breathing space where a town used to be, and where something else lingers still. You probably wouldn't survive this place, back then. Not for lack of trying, mind you, but because no one did. The town disappeared without fanfare, without fire, without even a last will or whispered warning. One day it bustled, and then it slept. Forever. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from, what time it is, whether you've got a blanket wrapped around you, or maybe a cat curled at your feet. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge onward, the chill brushing the back of your neck like a cold breath. The grass grows strange here, sparse but not dying, stubborn, and as the horizon sinks into the kind of darkness that feels thick, like old wool, you notice something. The path splits, not in two, but into many. Each trail is faint, too faint to follow with certainty. Still, you choose one, the one with the smallest stones, because they glint oddly, like someone polished them recently. There are no sounds of insects here, not even a buzzing gnat. And when you pause, you hear your own breath bounce back at you, just a touch too slowly. At the top of a low rise, you find a hollow, cupped like a bowl, where the mist swirls heavier. This is where the town should be. There's no signpost, no fence, just a sense, a very old, very gentle nudge that says you've arrived. The hill is warm beneath your palm. Not just not cold, but warm, like something once slept there and only just rose. The stars above you shimmer, as if you're underwater. It's disorienting, like blinking through tears. You shake your head. Look again, but now they're still. In your pocket, you find a slip of old paper, not yours. It's folded carefully, aged but not rotting. No name, no address, just one line in curled handwriting. Do not knock after dusk. You look around. There's nothing to knock on. And yet, somewhere to your left, deep beneath ivy and thyme, you think you see the curve of a roof tile. Not many, just one. You make your way toward it. Each step feels soft, deliberate, like the earth is letting you walk, not simply allowing it. The grass parts, the mist thickens, and then a shape. Stone. A wall. Very low, no more than knee height, covered in lichen, pale and freckled green. You run your hand across it. The stone is smooth. Too smooth. Worn down not by weather, but maybe by touch. Repetition. Centuries of it. The layout starts to form. A circle, broken, incomplete. Once a foundation, perhaps, of something modest. A hut, a home. You close your eyes for just a moment, and you swear, just on the edge of waking memory, you hear laughter. Children? No, too melodic. Bells? Not quite. It's something in between. A sound shaped like a smile. When you open your eyes again, a low mist has gathered around your knees. Your breath fogs the air, and the silence thickens. It's easy, very easy, to believe that this place is simply empty, that the town never was, that the map was wrong, that no one lived here. Except they did. Because just there, near a thistle bush you didn't see before, a small wooden object juts from the ground. Not a post. A spindle. You kneel, brushing it clean. It's a child's spinning top. Wooden. Faded blue paint around its middle. You turn it over. Someone carved a name into the base. The letters are tiny, barely legible. The name is Eerie. And just like that, you know someone was here. A girl, maybe 5 or 6. She lived. She played. Maybe she had a dog. Maybe she spun this top on the flat stones while her father brought in sheaves of wheat. Maybe she cried when she lost it. Maybe. The wind stirs. The grass doesn't move. You rise slowly, holding the top. It's warm, like the hill. And you realize you're no longer alone on this little knoll. Not in a threatening way, no, but in a way that suggests something old is watching, waiting, patient, not unfriendly, but interested. It's the kind of feeling that makes you want to speak politely, just in case. So you do. Good evening. You whisper to no one and everyone. The mist ripples outward. You take that as a reply. Behind you, a second foundation wall rises faintly out of the earth. This one forms a square. Within it, a flat stone, darker than the others, sits perfectly centered. You step toward it. Your foot strikes something. Another spindle. This one black. Heavier. Etched with a spiral design that loops in and on itself. Beside it, a rusted hinge. Smooth. Still lightly oiled. Odd, isn't it? That oil would remain. You crouch, listening. There's a faint sound beneath your boots. No, not beneath, within the ground. A slow, rhythmic hum. Barely there. You lie down. Press your ear to the earth. It pulses. Steady. Slow. Like a breath. You lift your head sharply. Sit up. The night is still, but it's no longer silent. Somewhere, very faintly, a bell chimes. Just one note. Not metallic, wooden, almost. A xylophone struck far, far away. It shouldn't be possible. And yet, as you tuck the spinning tops into your coat and walk carefully away from the ring of stones, the bell tolls again. Once, then again, 3 times. The rule from the note echoes in your head. Do not knock after dusk. You haven't knocked, but it seems something else has, and something old may have answered. You leave the stone ring behind, heart pacing a little slower now, though your fingers still twitch around the twin spindles hidden in your coat pocket. The mist clings closer tonight. It's not menacing, not really, but curious, like a child peeking out from behind a curtain. Ahead, the land dips slightly. You descend into it, careful not to slip on the dew-slick grass, your steps muffled and strangely weightless. The air has the hush of freshly fallen snow, though no flakes fall. And just when you start to wonder if you're walking in circles, you see it. Or rather, you don't. There is a shape where something should be. A negative space. A flatness too smooth, too deliberate. A village square, perhaps, though the buildings that once framed it are long swallowed by root and time. But the shape remains. The fog clears just enough to reveal an outline. Foundations. Low edges of old timber long since rotted away, and packed earth where walls once stood. No roofs, no windows, no thresholds to cross. But the bones of a hamlet lie spread out before you, like the ribs of a sleeping beast. You crouch and run your hand along one of the boundaries. The soil feels packed, unnaturally flat, compressed by centuries of feet, carts, and life. And it should have grown wild. Nature should have taken it back, but it hasn't. Instead, the ground here is respectful, almost reverent, as though it, too, remembers. And then you spot it, an iron nail, half buried, rusted to a cinnamon hue. You nudge it free. It's square-cut, the kind used in timber homes centuries ago, probably 14th century, judging by the shape. Still sturdy, in a quiet way. You slip it into your pocket beside the spindles. Your coat's starting to feel like a relic museum. Or a curse bag. Not that you believe in that sort of thing. Not exactly. You wander through the open spaces, each one murmuring suggestion rather than certainty. Here, a home. There, a smithy perhaps. Further along, a long rectangle that could have been a tavern or gathering hall. You try to picture it. Mugs clinking, dogs begging under the table, someone trying to play a lute in the corner badly. But in this place, the silence remembers better than you ever could. There are no birds. There are never birds. Even the wind hesitates here. Then, your foot catches on something small and sharp. You wince, crouch, and brush away the dirt. It's glass. A shard from a window, maybe, but not jagged. Smooth, melted, almost reshaped. You rub it between your fingers. See glass, but miles from any shore. Now your skin prickles. Villages don't just vanish. They can be sacked, burned, abandoned, yes. But even those leave signs. Graves, debris, names in dusty tax records. This place simply disappeared. And not in a flash. Not overnight. In the royal ledgers of 1343, the town is listed plainly. 36 families, 2 mills, 1 chapel, and an apothecary. Nothing remarkable. No noble ties. No feuds. Just people. Living. And in the ledgers of 1344, gone. Crossed out in a thin, elegant hand. No margin notes. No plague mark. No asterisk. Not even the red ink usually used for death tallies. Just gone. You pause at the edge of what looks like it might have been the chapel. A single pillar remains, maybe 6 feet tall, made of something chalky. The top is broken, jagged like a snapped bone. Lichen creeps down its side. You step closer. There's a small hollow in the base. You reach inside. Cloth. Dried, crumbling, but wrapped around something hard. You ease it out with care. Unwrap it slowly. A tiny bell. The kind they might have used to call for service. Or to mark a passing. You give it a shake. Nothing. No sound. You flick it harder. Still nothing. Then, faintly, just as you're slipping it into your coat, you hear a different bell. Not the one in your hand. Distant. Echoing. It rings twice. Then falls quiet. You freeze. That's 4 total tonight. Coincidence? You step back from the ruined chapel, squinting through the mist. The wind begins to pick up now, soft and low, more exhale than breeze. It rustles the edges of memory. You pull your coat tighter and follow what used to be a path, narrow, overgrown, but still obedient to feet long gone. You come to a fork. One trail leads uphill toward the remains of a water wheel, long silent. The other veers toward a cluster of stone stubs, like fingers reaching up from the ground. You choose the fingers. Up close, the stonework is delicate, unusual, ornate in a way most villages couldn't afford. But this is personal craftsmanship, small sculptures, maybe, decorative markers. You count them, 13, arranged in a crescent, each one facing the center. You step into the middle. The ground is sunken here, as if something heavy once stood and then lifted. A large flat rock remains at the center, blackened, but not burnt, and just on the edge of it, etched so lightly that the fog nearly hides it. For those who stood still, you reach out to touch it, but pause. The mist curls around your wrist. Something about this feels like a grave, but not for bodies. For time, you slowly step backward, careful not to tread on the crescent. Behind you, the air shifts. Not a sound, but a feeling like you're being remembered by something older than you. And just like that, you understand why no one rebuilt here. Why no animals stray too far into the moor. Why no one planted crops again, though the soil is good and the rainfall gentle. Because this isn't a forgotten town. It's a town that chose to be forgotten. Or worse, was asked to. And everyone agreed. In England, several villages vanished from maps after the Black Death. Not because everyone died, but because a few surviving families walked away and never returned. The land was left fallow, and memories simply faded. You traced the outline of one last home before you turned back toward the rise. And there, as you crest the ridge again, you spot it, barely visible, far off through the fog. A figure, standing perfectly still, facing away from you, cloaked, unmoving, watching the vanished village, as though waiting for something that never came. You call out, just a soft hello. The figure turns, but only slightly. You blink, and they're gone. You close your eyes, breathe, and exhale slow. Then you head back down the ridge. The spindles, the bell, the nail, the melted glass. You're collecting ghosts, whether you meant to or not. There's something about walking through a place that no longer exists. It sharpens the senses. Every sound feels deliberate. Every shift in wind becomes a sentence in a language you almost understand. You move slowly now, more deliberate with your steps, as if the earth might respond if you're polite enough. And the village, if we can still call it that, seems to reward your caution. A low wall leads you to the remains of what may have been the steward's hall. Not a lord's estate, but the place where things were managed. Weights balanced, fields measured, names recorded. There's a kind of reverence to record keeping, isn't there? People forget that. We remember songs, we remember faces, but nothing holds like ink on parchment. When you make a list, you make something sacred, unless someone crosses it out. The wind shifts. You duck beneath what's left of an arched doorway, its curve long since softened by moss and time, and step into a space that smells faintly, impossibly, of ink and old wood. The scribe's hut, maybe. A clerk's cell. It's smaller than you'd expect, but the bones of the room are precise. You can feel it. You kneel, brushing aside debris. Stone tiles, worn, but at their center, something strange. A carved basin, set into the floor, no wider than a bowl. Empty, but stained. Dark. You touch it gently. Ash, just a smear. And around the rim, scratched in letters so tight they overlap. All writs end in silence. You sit back on your heels. The words linger. It reminds you of the records you read before coming here, before curiosity led you into mist and memory. There had been a copy of a land charter. 1332, royal seal, intact. Names of the tenants. The steward. Even the baker's apprentice, for some reason. Someone had taken care to list it all. But then, on the next year's version, the same village appears. Except someone had drawn a line through its name. Not red ink. Not black. Ash ink. Uncommon. Highly unstable. Used only for specific ceremonies. Penance scrolls, oath-breaking documents, or symbolic annulments. A way of saying, this should not have been. You pull out your notebook. Flip to the copied page. There it is. Brackham, 34 souls, 1 field tithe, bonded rights to the mill at Langford. Line struck through. Next to it, in small, curling script, echoes remain. That wasn't in the official transcription. You checked. You double-checked. That note, someone added it later. And in the same ash ink. Who adds a footnote to oblivion? You stand slowly, slipping your notebook away, and cast your gaze back out toward the invisible rooftops. Someone, somewhere, wanted to erase this place so gently that it would seem like it never was. But not completely, because ash is only used when there's guilt. Someone felt it. Someone wanted it known, quietly. You pass beneath a low stone arch, what might have once been the town's western gate, now no more than 2 stooped pillars leaning toward each other like elderly gossips. Beyond them, the path narrows again, curling up through a grove of stunted birches. The trees grow strangely here, leaning away from the center of the vanished village, like they're being repelled. Their branches twist back toward the moor, like compass needles spun off course. You stop at one, running a finger down its bark. The surface is smooth. Too smooth. No moss. No insect marks. No birds' nests in the branches. They're newer than the village, you realize. They came after. Nature reclaims what it can. But sometimes, even she respects the invisible line between what is and what was asked to be forgotten. As you move between the trees, something glints near the roots of the third one. You crouch. Dig gently. A wax tablet. Cracked. The wax itself chipped and dry, but the wooden frame is intact. You lift it carefully. On one side, the stylus. On the other, the last words written, still faintly visible in the hardened wax. The ink ran backward. A phrase? A metaphor? Or something literal? You remember the stories. Medieval scribes spoke of black days, when ink would run the wrong way on the page, back toward the quill. They believed it meant a falsehood had been written, or a vow made in vain. Superstition? Probably. Unless someone here wrote something they weren't meant to. A name, a truth, a confession. And the ink turned on them. Ash ink, made from charred parchment or bone, was sometimes used by medieval monastic orders to symbolically erase names from memory. The practice was called damnatio memoriae, a damnation of memory. You step further through the grove. More wax tablets. More fragments. One etched with a spiral pattern, similar to the design on the black spindle. Another with a child's scrawl, looping lines, nonsense syllables. But centered among them, a phrase. No bell but breath. And below it, do not say it aloud. Say what exactly? You sit on a flat rock beside the last birch, heart thudding gently, not with fear, but with unease. Something is pulling a thread in your brain, tugging lightly, persistently. This town didn't fall to fire. It didn't starve. It didn't rot. It was silenced, not killed, just asked to be still. And the people obeyed, or vanished, or something else entirely. In the late 1600s, a folktale from Northumberland told of a village that spoke itself away. The legend claimed its people whispered so softly that their words unstitched their own existence, thread by thread. The village's name was never recorded, but old maps show a blank space labeled, "Too Quiet." You rise slowly, stretching your legs, and begin to make your way down the hill again. The mist follows, soft and thin, like gauze trailing from an unseen figure. Your coat feels heavier now. The tops, the nail, the bell, the shard of melted glass, the wax tablet. Each piece adds a kind of gravity to your pockets. Your thoughts grow quiet. And then something strikes you. You haven't seen a single piece of cloth. No buttons. No shoes. Not even bones. Only tools. Tokens. Symbols. As if everything living was taken away, and only the story remained. Historians still argue whether the village of Warham Percy in Yorkshire was abandoned due to plague, economic hardship, or something far more intentional. Documents suggest an orchestrated departure, but the reason remains elusive. You pause at the base of a low rise, just before the edge of the moor. One last look back at the ghost village. The wind stills. A single owl hoots, off in the far trees. It doesn't cross the hollow. Even the wildlife knows where not to tread. You walk on, stepping over a worn stone that once marked the town's boundary, etched deep into its face. Speak not the name. You look behind you, and for a moment, just a moment, you realize. You never did learn the name. You'd seen it once in the charter. You remember reading it. But now it's just out of reach. The sound of it, the shape of it in your mouth, gone. The town doesn't just erase itself. It erases your memory of it. You shiver, and then you walk faster. The wind drifts like a sigh against your cheek as you move beyond the last of the marked stones. Though the ghost of the village fades behind you, the land does not return to normal. It does not open up or brighten. Instead, the quiet deepens, like you've passed through one story into another that doesn't quite belong to this world. Ahead, the land dips once more sudden this time. A sunken fold in the earth, almost too symmetrical to be natural. You descend slowly, boots sliding slightly on the damp grass, until you reach the bottom, a soft clearing surrounded by thorn and briar. In its center sits a structure that somehow escaped your notice from above. A well, circular, stone-lipped, and so perfectly intact that it seems out of place among the ruins. As if time considered it an exception, you approach. The air here is different, heavier. Still no bird song, though the thickets suggest nesting. The moss on the stones is minimal, almost as though the well is cleaned, or perhaps respected. You peer inside. The light doesn't go far. Just a few feet of mossy brick before the dark takes over. No water reflects back. Just shadow. You drop a pebble in. No splash. No echo. Nothing. And yet, when you lean in closer, you see something glinting faintly just beyond the reach of daylight. You lower yourself onto the stone rim. Careful, cautious. The cold bites at your palms. There, at the edge of shadow. Shoes. Not modern ones, no. Children's shoes. Very old. Leather. Worn in shape, but not worn down. One is turned on its side, the other upright, as if someone took them off and placed them gently, waiting to step back into them. You frown. They're absurdly small, almost dainty, likely for a girl of no more than 5. And yet, the soles are clean, preserved, no decay, no soil crusted between the seams, as though the shoes have waited, untouched by time. You lower a rope, found coiled by the edge of the well, though you can't recall seeing it there earlier, and hook the shoes out with careful nudges. They come up easily, obediently. Up close, they're stranger still. No wear, no cracking, stitching intact, laces knotted in a way you recognize, though you can't place from where. And inside, the faintest smell of lavender, or perhaps just your imagination. One of the shoes has something tucked into the toe. You turn it over and gently shake it. A thimble falls into your palm. Tiny, brass, inscribed, on the inside, too faint to catch without angling toward the last of the fading light. Wait inside. Not come back soon. Not be safe. Just that. Wait inside what? You sit quietly for a long moment, cradling the shoes in your lap. This doesn't feel like a burial or a discarded item. This feels like a message, not meant for you. And yet, you take out your notebook again. You sketch the shoes. Note the placement, the well, the absence of echo. It's curious. In abandoned villages, especially those affected by sudden disease, you often find the discarded remains of everyday life. Combs, pots, tools, sometimes even shoes. But never in this condition, never this curated, and always, always with signs of panic. Not here. This feels arranged, not in a showy, ceremonial way, but private, deliberate, a trace of something domestic. Ordinary. The cobbler's ghost, you think. Perhaps he made these for a daughter who never wore them outside, or for a girl who walked out of her home one evening and didn't come back. There's a local saying in northern hamlets, you'll know a soul stayed if their shoes are waiting. It's used mostly to describe spirits lingering, the idea that the dead leave their last footsteps in their souls. It's more poetic than practical, but the shoes in your lap make it hard to dismiss. You wonder what else the well holds, what else the silence has swallowed. But you don't look again. Not now. You slip the shoes into your bag, carefully, respectfully, and continue on. The path here doesn't seem like it should exist. It curves along the edge of a brook that doesn't burble or splash, just hums. A low, constant tone, natural but not familiar. The stones beside the water are smooth, arranged almost. You catch the faint outline of old steps, like someone once lined the stream for walking barefoot. You remove one glove, press your hand to the water. It's warm. You flinch back. The brook is warmer than the air. That shouldn't be possible. You kneel again and stare into it. No fish, no pebbles shifting in the current, just that steady hum. And then you spot something drifting below the surface. Pale, flat, irregular. Paper? You lean closer. A page, wet but not tearing. Ink still faintly visible. You retrieve it with a stick, laying it carefully across a flat stone. Most of the writing is gone, but a few lines cling on. Do not stir her from the waiting. In her shoes, she waits still. You stand slowly. The cobbler's daughter, perhaps. The shoes, the thimble, the page, the silence. It paints a picture, one of absence that was chosen, not forced. And yet, the strangest thing is what's missing. You've now seen remains of tools, papers, paths, symbols, but no people, not even signs of hasty departure. Nothing scattered, just carefully paused. You remember reading a story, half folktale, half recorded incident, in which a midwife described walking through an entire hamlet in the Welsh hills and finding every home empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle, just food still cooking in hearths. Tables set, windows open. She never found where they'd gone. And the next year, that hamlet vanished from records. Scratched out, with no explanation. The ink used? Ash. Some historians believe this may have been a kind of quiet heresy. Not rebellion, but something softer. A withdrawal. As if the people believed retreat from the world was the only salvation left. Not death. Not escape. Just stillness. You begin to understand, in some quiet corner of your mind, why no one rebuilt here. Not because of fear, but because rebuilding would feel rude. As if talking during a eulogy. As if interrupting a breath that hasn't yet been exhaled. The well. The shoes. The soft warning on the thimble. These are not memories. These are reminders. This place wasn't simply forgotten. It was asked to be left alone. And so far, people have listened. So far. But you are not most people. You've walked its paths, lifted its tokens. And if someone, or something, left this for you to find, the next step is no longer yours alone. You're part of the story now, whether you meant to be or not. You hear a sound behind you. Not a footstep, just a creak. Wood on stone. You turn, slowly. The trees are still. The fog stirs. And in the far distance, the bell chimes once. Then again. 5 total. And still counting. You climb the next rise slowly, shoes slightly damp from the hum-warmed brook behind you. The wind, which once carried soft gusts of curiosity, now drapes itself around your shoulders like a shawl. Not heavy, not quite comforting, just present, like it's listening. Beyond the birches, the land levels out again, wide and deliberate. And there, at the top of a gentle slope, you see it. The crooked skeleton of a chapel's bell tower, half collapsed, half defiant, its stones held together more by stubbornness than mortar. One final arch remains, rising like a frame without a painting. And at its crown, a rusted beam juts into the sky, empty. No bell. You'd expect that by now. Even in ruined places, bells are some of the last to go. They're heavy, grounded, difficult to steal. But here, the beam is clean. No green rust where the bell chain would have rubbed. No dust scar. Nothing to suggest a bell was ever hung at all. You duck beneath the arch. The air here is cold. Not winter cold, but sealed door cold. Like something unopened in a long, long time. Inside, light spills through the holes in the roof. Dust floats thick and lazy. The chapel's interior is bare, though not barren. You can still make out the alignment of pew stones, the steps to a vanished altar, the faint groove in the floor where feet used to kneel. And the strangest thing? It doesn't feel ruined. It feels paused. You walk to the center. There's a stone pedestal, perhaps where the pulpit once stood. On it, an open book, stone, not parchment, carved page by page, worn as though fingers traced it daily. You lean in. No verses, no psalms, just names. A list, dozens, maybe more. Many of them faded, but a few still etched deep enough to read. Mara, Ison, Aldwin, Para, Tomlin. The last name ends mid-curve, as if the carver had paused and never returned. You step back. Not a gravestone, not quite a memorial, more like a placeholder. The church records you'd consulted before your journey were just as odd. The scribe who compiled the diocesan register in 1381 had included this place. Births, marriages, baptisms, burials, all neatly copied from earlier scrolls. But then the entries stopped. No plague cross, no marginal note, just blank columns for an entire century. A silent ledger. The scribe didn't even strike through it, just left the space as if waiting, as if someone else might fill it in later. They never did. There's a phrase common among archivists and Old Town scholars. Ink forgets slower than people. But here, even the ink seemed to lose its nerve. You turn toward what remains of the altar. A flat slab, only partially cracked, moss blooming along its edges like lace. Something glimmers faintly in a groove along the top. You run a finger along it. Metal, not silver, not iron. Lead, no, pewter. Soft, malformed, melted into the shape of a thin coin. Pressed into the surface beside it, almost lost in the wear of age, is a word. Silentium, silence. Not merely quiet, not the absence of sound, but the presence of it. You step away, suddenly aware of your own breathing, your boots on the stone, the rustle of your coat. This chapel isn't haunted. It's hollowed. Not emptied, but emptied out. There's a difference. You feel it in your spine. Outside, the mist has thickened again, but not everywhere. A strange corridor of clear air cuts through it, as though preserved by habit. You follow it. It leads to what was once a schoolhouse. Low stone walls. One corner intact. The doorframe still stands, although the door itself is long gone. On the threshold, scratched lightly into the stone, almost playfully. Whisper here. Inside, a single wooden bench remains, splintered but upright. Beside it, half buried in the earth floor, a child's slate. You lift it, words still faintly visible in chalk. I can't hear the bell. You run your thumb along the letters. The bell again, or the lack of it. It comes up too often. The bells never rang. Or they did, but not for long. Maybe they were taken down. Maybe someone silenced them. In certain border villages, there are stories about bell fasting, the deliberate removal of bells when a settlement entered ritual silence. Sometimes for mourning, sometimes for penance, sometimes for reasons no one dared write down. And in even rarer cases, bells weren't taken down. They were buried. You return to the chapel's base, circling slowly. Your foot strikes something firm beneath the grass. You kneel, dig gently. Stone, a flat slab. It takes time, but you uncover most of it. It's circular, carved with concentric rings, each bearing names, symbols, and, at the center, a bell. Not real. A carving, but unmistakable. You press your hand to it. Cold, and then warm. You jerk back. Not burned, but felt. Like a heartbeat you can't place. You leave it undisturbed. Whatever was done here, it was done with care. And maybe warning. A local saying floats back to you now, heard in passing at a roadside inn before your journey even began. When the bell goes missing, the door stays shut. You thought it nonsense. Now less so. Historians still debate cases like this. Not just this village, but others, too. Empty on maps. Crossed from records. Places that don't have a final year. Just a slow dissolve. Some argue plague. Some blame the shifting tides of trade, failed crops, or forced resettlement. But in every case, there's something odd in the absence. No fire damage. No mass graves. Just a full set of footprints leading into the fog. And none returning. You leave the chapel quietly, shoes now nearly silent on the grass. The fog breathes around you. You've stopped checking your watch. Not because you forgot it, but because you're not sure it would matter anymore. This place is a pocket, a breath being held, and you are, for now, inside it. The bells don't ring here, but silence does. The silence has a texture now. You feel it in your ears, like pressure shifting before a storm, and in your throat, like air that's just slightly too thick. It isn't unpleasant, but it is present, like the weight of someone sitting beside you without saying a word. You follow the edge of the old chapel's boundary wall, fingers tracing the stone as you walk. Beyond it, the ruins thin. Not in number, there are still outlines of buildings scattered across the moor, but in detail. They feel softer, washed away, as if memory itself is giving up, piece by piece. One building, though, stands out. Not large, just tall enough to suggest it had a loft once. The windows are narrow slits. The doorframe still upright, and the faint outline of a pestle and leaf, carved into the stone above the entrance, tells you this was likely the apothecary. You step inside. The air changes the moment you cross the threshold. It smells faintly of herbs. Dry, crushed, impossible, of course, but familiar. You'd recognize that dusty lavender, the hint of yarrow, and the bite of sage anywhere. Aromatics that cling to the walls of old medicine chests. Sunlight filters in through the collapsed roof, catching on floating dust. You let your eyes adjust. Against the far wall stands a shelf. Empty, but not unused. There are faint marks in the wood where jars once sat. Circles of clean grain amid the dust. Someone cleaned it once. Carefully. Recently. No. Not possible. But it feels that way. Below the shelf, tucked into a hollow behind a stone drawer, you find it. A ledger, bound in cracked leather, thinner than it should be. Most old village ledgers are bursting with entries, names, and symptoms no one today could diagnose. This one, sparse. You open it slowly. The page is brittle but intact. The script is neat, steady, written in a style common to the mid-1300s, elegant, slanted, flourished at the tails. And each entry is dated with care. But something's off. There are too many blank lines between them. The first few pages list the usual: salves administered, tinctures brewed, poultices applied, all in crisp detail. But then, midway through a sentence about a thorn infection, there's nothing. The ink stops. Not a spill. Not a mistake. Just ends. The next page is blank. Then the next. You flip forward. More entries. Years later. As if someone tried to pick up where they left off. And once again, halfway through, it stops. As though memory kept trying to write itself back into place. But the village didn't allow it. There's a name repeated several times. Tavia. No surname. Just Tavia. Midwife, you assume. The handwriting remains the same. But every time she signs her name, the ink grows fainter. As if the more she tried to remember, the more the place slipped from her. You keep reading. One page lists a dozen children, born, healthy, mothers stable. The kind of cold, careful list a healer would make to reassure herself that all was well. But the dates don't line up. There are gaps. Years where no births are recorded at all. Villages don't work that way. Even in times of hardship, children are born. Even in war. Even in plague. Life insists. But not here. The last full entry reads: child healthy, no name. Mother quiet. Father not present. All three will wait. No bell. No name. No father. No bell. The next page is torn out. Not carelessly. You run your finger along the edge. The paper wasn't ripped. It was cut. Cleanly. Removed. And beneath the missing page, on the inside of the back cover, someone's written in barely their ink: let the forgetting be gentle. You close the ledger softly. This wasn't medicine. This was ritual. Whatever happened here, it was chronicled with intention. Selectively. As if someone, Tavia, or someone close to her, wanted to record what they could, while quietly erasing what they shouldn't. You slip the book into your satchel, next to the shoes and the spindle and the bell. Your pack's weight has shifted again. Not heavier, just more specific. You step back into the light. There's an odd warmth on your back. Not heat, just pressure. You turn quickly. No one. But the smell is stronger now. Crushed herbs. Not from memory. Present. Real. You kneel and run your fingers through the dust where the shelf once stood. Nothing. Then, near your boot, you notice a small, round stone, carved, hollowed slightly. A mortar, still faintly green-stained from something pounded long ago. You pick it up. There, beneath it, tucked into a fold of stone, is a fragment of paper. Thin, hand-cut. You unfold it slowly. The ink is fresh, still wet. It reads, "You are not too late." The paper flutters in your hand, like it wants to disappear before you finish reading. But it holds. You tuck it away. There's a phrase you once heard from a folklore archivist in Brittany: sipping tea thick with honey and memory. She said, if you find the healer's words still damp, the patient isn't done sleeping. You'd thought it charming. Now you're not so sure. As you leave the apothecary, the sun slips low, though you're not convinced it ever rose fully. The horizon glows dully, a slow ember more than light, and the mist around you thickens, but only at the edges, as if trying to herd you gently, guide your path without touching it. You pass the remnants of what might have been homes. Low walls, overgrown doorways, a broken loom lying quiet in the weeds. And yet, something remains clean. Not tidy, not restored, just untouched, like time skipped it. And something else inside you, older than you care to admit, knows why. because even time needs permission. And here, perhaps, it was not granted. Scholars once tried to track a village not far from this region. It appeared in royal tax records for only 11 years. Before and after, nothing. Its location, when pressed, was always described as near the edge of the known fields. No maps placed it, and when one particularly stubborn historian spent a year trying to locate it, they returned with only this: a single spindle, a half-full apothecary bottle, and an unshakable stammer. Their notes read, "The town does not lie. It waits." You take another step down the hill. The fog rises to meet you, and you realize something you hadn't noticed until now. Your coat? It smells faintly of lavender. You move downhill along a path that never formally existed, but now seems to know exactly where you want to go. Every branch parts slightly before you touch it. The ground never truly muddies, only softens under your steps, like pressed wool. The air thickens again, not in warning, but in invitation. You notice the trees thinning as you go. Not dead, just absent, like they chose not to grow here. At the base of the slope, the land cups inward, a shallow basin. The grass here is a darker green, not wild, but too uniform to be natural. Something beneath the soil compacts it. You feel it in your feet first. That strange resistance. Not stone, not water, just not earth. You kneel, press your hand to the ground. Warm again, not summer warm, but body warm. You glance up, uneasy. The fog hesitates at the edge of the basin. It doesn't enter. You begin to clear away the moss in a circle, no bigger than a dinner plate. The roots resist your fingers at first, then seem to pull back on their own, revealing something pale beneath the soil. You pause. Not stone, not wood. You scrape a little more. The surface is smooth, coiled. You dig further. It's a spindle, one end broken, the other still wound with something that looks like thread, though it shimmers faintly in the dim light. Almost too fine for cloth, too fluid to be hair. You touch it. The thread hums. A soft, low vibration, like an instrument long out of tune, still resonating with its last note. You try to lift it, but it doesn't come. The thread continues down into the earth, unspooling, tugging lightly, as though resisting being brought back up. You sit back on your heels. It was never a root. The spindle was planted. Someone wound this thread downward. On purpose. You dust your hands and rise. There's another circle nearby, wider, sunken slightly. You walk to it. Kneel again. This one has no moss. Just stones arranged in a careful spiral. 13, like the crescent from earlier. Each stone carved with a tiny symbol. Not letters. Not numbers. Familiar, though. Spindle marks. The patterns used by weavers to count thread, track hours, pass messages. You reach the center. There's a bowl-shaped depression lined with slate. At its heart, a wooden handle snapped off at the end. No metal, no blade. A distaff, maybe, or the remains of a distiller's rod. Whatever it was, someone set it here deliberately, and tied around the handle a braid. 3 strands, uncut, one black, one gray, one pale gold, knotted together, and tucked into the knot, a feather, charred at the tip. It feels old, important. You've read that in some abandoned hill villages, braided cords were used as boundary markers. If someone was buried outside the graveyard, or if something was meant to be held in, rather than remembered out, a braid would be left above the site. A signal not to disturb what had settled. The feather, though, is odd. Too large for a crow, too soft for a hawk, and the burn mark, almost surgical, as though it had been touched by fire without catching flame. You look around. The basin seems still, but the weight in the air deepens. You remember an old tale from a Cornish historian, half myth, half family warning, about a village where the land itself was threaded shut. They said the midwives didn't just deliver children, they delivered silence. That their spindles were used not to make clothes, but to bind time. The thread went downward, always downward, and if it ever pulled back, you were not to answer. You pick up the distaff piece. It's heavier than it should be. You feel a pulse in your palm. Not imagined. Not metaphorical. You let go of it. It settles silently back into the earth. All around the spiral stones, the ground seems to exhale. Not wind. Just breath. Slow. Steady. Waiting. There's a legend, not well known, of a steward's daughter in the Peak District who vanished one winter. No storm. No ransom. Just silence. Her shoes were found in a bowl of salt. Her spindle left mid-thread. The family didn't speak of her again. But 30 years later, every child in the valley woke one morning with thread wrapped around their wrists. 3 colors: black, gray, gold. They say the village held a festival after that. But no songs were sung. Only bells were rung. And just once. Then never again. You rise and step back from the basin. The fog watches, unmoving. You're beginning to understand something. This place was not emptied. It was spooled. Carefully. Intentionally. Layer by layer. Wound around silence. You wonder what happens if the thread is pulled all the way up again. You hope you don't find out. You make your way back through the thinning trees. There's a narrow track you hadn't noticed before, leading between 2 flat stones marked with twin spirals. You follow it. It leads to a clearing, square-shaped, carefully edged, the ground tamped flat like it was once a courtyard. In the center stands a frame. Not a house. Not a monument. Just 4 upright timbers joined by crossbeams. Like a loom. A large one. But there's no cloth. Only air. You step through the frame. The air on the other side is cooler. Brighter. And for one instant, one fraction of a moment, the fog clears. You see them. People. Standing still. Dozens. Silent. Not looking at you. Not moving. Just there. Some facing inward, some outward. Each holding something small. A spindle. A bell. A shoe. A book. And then, they're gone. The fog returns. Your breath curls out in front of you like a tether. You step backward through the frame. No change. No sound. Only the soft creak of wood behind you as the wind returns. You walk quickly now. And when you pass the basin again, you don't look down. Some things were meant to stay threaded. Others were never meant to be lifted at all. The fog has taken on a new weight. Not heavier exactly, just more deliberate. Each step feels measured, as if you're moving between lines of something that isn't written down anymore. You begin to hear the soft pad of your own breath, slower now, steadier, echoing faintly in this hush between histories. To your left, a low stone wall rises, curved in a semicircle, moss-crusted and crumbling like old teeth. You recognize the layout before your mind fully catches up. This is a boundary wall, the kind that once separated sacred ground from the rest of the world. But there's no chapel here, no steeple, no altar, only the wall, and the ground beyond it, strangely bare. You step inside. Grass, neatly flattened by time, stretches out before you in soft undulations. At its center, scattered at wide intervals, are stone markers, too short to be headstones, too plain to be decorative. Just rough carved stubs of granite, like blunted pencils set in the soil. No names, no dates. You move to the nearest one and kneel. Nothing. No inscription. Just the faint outline of something chiseled long ago, then worn to near extinction. Not a cross. Not a sigil. Just a notch. You walk among them, slowly. 12. 13. 17. No flowers. No offerings. No signs that anyone has come to visit in centuries. And yet, the air is not forgotten. It's not neglected. There's a maintenance here, natural but precise. The grass grows evenly. The wind stirs only at the edges. Even the birds, quiet as they are, do not land here. You find a circular marker near the center of the space. Wider, smoother, as though someone spent more time shaping it. You press your palm to it. Cool, not cold. There's a pulse in the stone, not imagined, not living, just remembered. You wonder what that means. Some churchyards in rural Scotland once kept stones like this, memory stones. Not gravestones, just places to mark where someone had been, even if no one knew who they were. It was said they anchored a person's absence in the world, so they wouldn't be lost entirely. A kind of kindness for the unnamed. But those stones bore symbols. This one does not. You step away, glancing back once. No footprints in the grass. Not even your own. You move on. The path rises again. And as you walk, something tugs faintly at your coat hem. Not a branch. Just the wind, curling backward, as if reluctant to let you go. You follow a new trail now. Narrower. More erratic. Less path. More suggestion. And then you come to a tree. Singular. Alone. Growing at the highest point of the hollow. It is vast. Not wide, but tall. Too tall. The kind of height that makes you tilt your head slowly, instinctively cautious. Its bark is white. Not birch white, but bone white. Smooth. Glossy in the low light. And there's something hanging from its lower limbs. Ribbons. Dozens. All the same length. All the same weave. No wind stirs them. You walk closer. Each ribbon has been knotted at the end, weighted with a small token. A bead. A button. A sliver of mirror. A scrap of thread. You reach out, barely brushing one with your fingers. It doesn't move, but your chest tightens. A sense that you've touched something that wasn't quite asleep. At the base of the tree, nestled in the roots, you find a ring of stones, again unmarked, each with a ribbon tied around it. The ribbons don't match those in the branches. These are frayed, weathered, bleached with time. One has all but unraveled, its thread trailing back into the grass like a loose stitch in the earth. You kneel, pick up the stone. Underneath it, a lock of hair, neatly braided. Still gold. Still fine. Impossible. But here, there's a theory whispered among folklorists that some burial sites are false rests. Not graves, but pauses. The difference is subtle. A grave finishes something. A pause merely suspends it. In these places, you find no bones, but plenty of place. The land remembers what the stone will not. And in those rare cases, the ones they don't publish, the sites seem to remember back. You replace the stone gently, and as you do, something catches your eye. Not far from the tree, half buried in grass, lies a folded cloth. Small, carefully creased. You lift it. It's a child's kerchief. Linen, hand-stitched. On the corner, embroidered in tiny black thread. Still, just that. You don't put it in your bag. You place it back. The longer you walk this place, the more you begin to understand a different kind of silence. The kind not born from fear or reverence, but agreement. Consent. This village wasn't lost. It was left, and the leaving was mutual. No screams, no fire, no war. Just a closing of doors. A final turn of the latch. You crest the ridge behind the tree and look down across the hollow. You can see nearly everything now. The chapel, the basin, the remnants of houses, the ghost paths. But you don't feel above them. You feel included. And it's not entirely comforting. There's a phrase found in one of the more obscure margins of the 14th century monastic chronicles, half Latin, half local dialect. Terra quae meminit absenti, the land that remembers in absence. Some believe it was poetic metaphor. Others suggest it referred to actual places where the landscape itself held memory better than the people ever could. You're starting to suspect this might be one of them. There are no graves, no names, only place. And place is not forgotten. Not yet. Not while someone is still willing to walk through it quietly, gently, without demanding answers. You step down from the ridge, and behind you, in the far distance, a single ribbon stirs. Not from wind, but as if someone passed beneath it. It begins to drizzle. Not rain, really. Just a fine mist collecting in the folds of your coat and the corners of your hair. You let it happen. You don't bother hurrying. The wind has quieted again, and the path under your boots is less dirt than memory, threaded with the soft trace of what once was here. You follow the slope to its lowest point. There, half swallowed by earth and time, is a structure. Unlike the others, it isn't crumbling. It isn't hollowed or broken open. In fact, it seems entirely intact. At first, you think it's a cellar. The roof is low, sloped into the earth, built from layered stone packed with dark clay. You circle it once. No windows, no smoke hole, no latch, no door. Just one sealed shape, squat and waiting. You place your hand to the wall. Dry? Despite the damp in the air, this stone is dry to the touch. Warm, too, as if it holds heat long after the sun has gone. You kneel, press your ear to the seam where wall meets earth. Silence, but not empty silence. That familiar hush again. Expectant, like something beyond the stone is listening back. You step away. There's no entrance, no threshold. It is a room, built and left. So why does it still feel used? You circle again. At the rear, near where the stone wall meets a thicket of overgrown ash, you spot something carved faintly into the rock. A spiral, not decorative, not elaborate, just one continuous line, cut deep into the stone. A symbol found in Neolithic graves and medieval pilgrimage paths alike. A journey in and a journey out. A mark left by people who needed to tell the land, we came here on purpose. You press your fingers to the spiral. The stone is warmest there. You sit, not because you're tired, but because it feels like the only appropriate posture. And from this spot, the sound changes. Just slightly. You begin to hear something low. Not a voice, not music, just rhythm, like a heartbeat, or a loom's shuttle, or a spindle spinning at a distance. Not mechanical, not ghostly, just consistent. And you remember a phrase from a record kept in the Lambeth archives, scribbled in a margin by a board scribe during a census. One house did not open. The door was unbuilt. They said it was not to keep something in, but to preserve its shape. Preserve what? Shape of what? You feel for your notebook. You've stopped writing full entries now, just impressions. Symbols. Shapes. What the land remembers better than ink ever could. You draw the spiral. Below it, you write. No door. Still full. You glance up. The mist is thick again, and the structure sits like a held breath. Some scholars argue that sealed structures like this, especially in remote northern or upland sites, were less about containment and more about retention. Places where grief, memory, even thought could be kept, not accessed, not revisited, just allowed to be. One particularly obscure theory posits that these closed rooms weren't always empty. Sometimes they held a ritual echo. Not a person, not a thing, a moment, a pattern so painful or so sacred that the village chose not to forget it, but to remove it from circulation, preserve it in stillness. You touch the spiral again, and for a moment, you swear you feel not stone, but fabric. Wool, worn and hand-spun. Your fingers come away dry. You stand, walk away slowly. You don't look back, not because you're afraid, but because something tells you that to look would be to ask, and that feels like the wrong kind of reverence. You follow the narrowing path up the ridge behind it. Here, the ground has changed again. No longer damp grass or mossy stone. Now it's tile, fired clay, laid flat in interlocking patterns. Most are broken, many are cracked, but you recognize the design, a weaving motif. Threads crossing, and here and there, marked into the tiles, faint remnants of pigment. Not decoration, direction. These tiles once led somewhere. Not just physically, but ritually. And then, you find it. Half buried in a drift of leaves and ash, a stone plinth. Flat-topped. No carvings, no offerings. Just a space. It's warm. Even in the chill mist, it holds heat. And on top of it, resting dead center, a cup. Simple, unglazed. Clay. Inside, 3 objects. A tooth, a feather, a single loop of black string. You don't touch them. You just sit and listen. There's a faint hum beneath the surface, like the land is whispering under its breath. You take out your notebook again, and without quite knowing why, you write. This was not a vanishing. It was a rearranging, and that feels right. You close the book. There's a legend kept in a monastery's private archives in northern France, recorded by a brother who walked through 23 ruined towns in his life. In his final entry, he described one place where no doors faced the road, no bells rang, and the fog did not rise unless you were alone. He never named it. He simply wrote, "Where nothing ended, they built rooms with no doors." You wonder if you're in that place now. You wonder how many others have found it. Or if, perhaps, you're still waiting to arrive. Because part of you, quietly, beneath thought, suspects the village isn't quite here. It's below you, not buried, not hidden, just folded, waiting for the right moment to be unspooled again. And that moment isn't yours. Not yet. You rise, brush the mist from your shoulders, and begin walking toward what the land shows you next. The path turns downward again, but not sharply, just enough to guide you, like a hand at the small of your back. You let it lead. The ground is softer here, almost padded, as if something once walked this way regularly, though you can't imagine what. The mist curls along the edges, never parting, never thickening, just present. And then you see it. A house. A real one. Well, mostly. The roof has slumped in a single place, but the walls are intact. There's a door, closed, and a window, just one, its wooden shutter hanging half open, a bit of linen curtain stiff with age behind the glass. The frame is still painted, pale blue beneath the dirt and weather. Somehow, it looks maintained. Not cleaned, not restored, but maintained the way memory is. You reach for the door. It opens with no resistance. Not a sound. Inside, stillness. Thick, deep, unmoving. No dust. No cobwebs. Nothing stirring. It doesn't feel empty. Just paused. Like someone stepped out for just a moment and forgot to come back. You enter slowly. The house is one room, long and narrow, with shelves running the length of the wall and a hearth at the far end. On the hearthstone, a pan rests as if waiting for fire. A single wooden chair sits before it, facing the flame that no longer burns. You move quietly, boots barely tapping the stone floor. The shelves are full. Books, spindles, folded cloth, a pair of worn gloves, a leather pouch of crushed flowers, lavender, mostly. Their scent clings faintly to the air, too familiar now to surprise you. You cross to the window. Outside, the world still waits. The fog hasn't pressed in. Not here. You turn, and for the first time, you see it. In the center of the room, a loom, taller than you expect. Simple, but solid. The kind used not for decoration or whimsy, but work. It stands like an altar, and on it, half woven, held taut in careful tension, is a pattern, threaded in shades of gray, black, and faded gold. You move closer. The threads shimmer slightly, like breath passed through them not long ago. You reach out, but stop. Something in your chest pulls tight. Not fear, just recognition. You've seen this pattern before, or at least part of it. The same shapes that mark the basin. The same alignment you traced into the tiles. The symbols that kept reappearing, just faint enough to feel unintentional. But here, they're deliberate. Each line threads perfectly into the next. Each color anchored in rhythm. But it's not finished. The final corner of the cloth hangs empty. The shuttle rests in its cradle, waiting. And beside it, on the loom shelf, sits a single spool of thread. Gold. Untouched. You don't pick it up. You simply sit in the chair by the hearth and look. Someone left this, and not in abandonment. They meant to return, or they meant for someone else to finish it. There's a saying in some weaving traditions, especially in regions with deep folk roots, that to leave a loom unfinished is to keep a promise unspoken. Not broken, just suspended, because the last thread, if placed, would complete something that shouldn't be closed. And yet, why does it feel like the loom is watching you? You glance at the walls again. Now you see the chalk lines. Just faint smudges near the ceiling, above the shelves. Circles, spirals, dots, all clustered like constellations. You stand, approach one, and trace it with your finger. It's soft, crumbly, fresh. Someone's been here, or is still here. And then you notice the candle. It sits behind the loom, nestled in a corner of stone, unlit, but warm. You hover your hand over it. No flame, no wick, just wax, soft as if touched by heat from the inside. There's a theory, found buried in the journals of a late 15th century guild scribe, that some weavers did not work in thread alone. They were tasked with preserving time, stitching the fabric of a village's rhythm into cloth that could be read by those who knew how to see it. The records are scarce. Many dismissed it as poetic fancy, but the scribe insisted that every town had a final pattern, one that marked the closing of its life, not as a death, but as a turn in the spool. You look again at the loom, and you realize something simple and terrible. The pattern isn't decorative. It's a map. The shapes, the lines, the colors, they aren't symbols. They're steps, events, moments. And if you wove the last thread, if you tied it off, it would end, not explode, not vanish, just stop being held and unravel. You step back. The gold thread flickers in the low light, not glowing, but waiting. There's a small scrap of cloth pinned to the loom's base. You crouch to see it better. It's handwritten, tiny script, 3 words, not yours yet. You breathe out slow. Something unspools in your chest, not fear, not sorrow, just the understanding that this isn't your story to close. You are here to observe, to walk through it gently, to carry what you can. You don't touch the loom again. You leave the house. The door closes softly behind you. The wind returns. Barely. You look up. The fog hasn't moved, but it feels thinner now. Not because you've cleared it, but because something is letting you go. You walk on, and behind you, in the silence of the house, a thread trembles, but does not fall. You walk a while in stillness, the kind of stillness that hums at the edges of sound, where your footfalls seem quieter than they should be. The fog clings low now, just brushing your calves, curling around your boots like it's reading your direction before letting you take it. Eventually, the path bends into a clearing, small, circular, and ringed by stones. Not heavy ones. These are smaller, child-sized, arranged in a wide loop, half sunken into the moss. Someone placed them carefully and long ago. The space inside the circle is clear, but not barren. Bits of broken wood, blackened ends, and a long collapsed structure of sticks lie in the center, radiating outward in a sunburst pattern. It was a fire circle, not for warmth, for gathering, a place for voices, laughter, maybe songs. You step inside. The moss is strangely thick here, dense and springy, like old felt. Your boots sink slightly. You pause, crouch, run your hand along the ground. Warm. Again, not alarming. Just steady, like somewhere deep below, something still pulses. At the edge of the circle, you find a small carved animal. Fox, maybe. No larger than a child's palm. One eye missing, the legs rounded from where. You turn it over. No inscription. Just soot. It's odd how intact it feels. Nothing about this sight suggests panic. No signs of sudden flight. No scattered belongings. No symbols of warding or alarm. Only interruption. Like a game paused mid-laugh. You sit for a moment. The air doesn't push you out. It accepts you, but it doesn't respond. You place the fox back where you found it. Then you notice something nearby. 3 smooth sticks, each carved at the end and arranged in a triangle outside the ring. You walk over. The carvings are shallow but distinct. Marks you've seen before, subtly mirrored in the tiles, the cloth, even the bowl back in the basin. Lines that mimic thread work, but with a deliberate break, like someone started weaving and chose not to finish. You feel a chill crawl across your spine. It's not fear. It's recognition. A pattern is forming. Not one that leads forward, but one that's folding in. You stand, looking out past the stones, and that's when you spot it. Just beyond the ring, nestled between 2 ancient trees, lies a bundle of cloth. Pale, pressed flat by time and weather. You approach. Unfold it carefully. Inside, children's shoes. 5 pairs, all different sizes, all hand-stitched, each one tied with a little tag. But the tags are blank. No names, no initials, just parchment, faded by years, curling at the edges. You place the cloth back and don't touch the shoes. Because you understand now, they're not lost. They're accounted for. There's a theory, mentioned in passing by a 17th century Dutch folklorist, that certain villages had roles beyond the usual farming and trade. That some places acted as keepers of pattern, ritual sites where seasonal events or symbolic actions had to occur or be reenacted, not for divine favor, but for memory itself to function. In those towns, it was often the children who carried the pattern, not by knowing it, but by playing it. Not unlike this circle, the center of a ring, the burning of symbolic sticks, the passing of tokens. It wasn't pretend, it was remembering in disguise. And if one day the pattern didn't complete, the song left half-sung, the game mid-movement, the fire unlit, the village would sleep, not die, not fall, just shift beneath itself, quietly, waiting. You begin to feel the ground under you breathe again. Not literally, but the air moves around your knees, soft currents that make the moss flatten and rise. Not wind, something else. You rise. You begin to see more objects in the grass now, scattered just beyond the stones. A wooden comb, a doll's threadbare sleeve, a bell without its clapper. All laid down, not dropped. You step carefully. Each item is pointed toward the center of the ring, facing inward. You think again of that phrase from the monastery journal, the land that remembers in absence. What if that memory isn't just passive? What if this village was structured around deliberate forgetting? And what if the children were taught how to do it? Not through fear, but through play, through story, through this circle. Because sometimes the safest way to bury something isn't with stone or earth. It's with repetition. You leave the clearing slowly, and once you're a few steps past its edge, you glance back. You hadn't noticed before, but between the stones, woven in the moss, are threads. Fine, black, looped through tiny iron hooks pressed into the base of each stone. You never stepped through them, but you feel now that something measured you as you walked, and found you not a match. That's good. You breathe again, and follow the narrowing path. Your mind drifts to a small chapel in Northumbria, long since abandoned. Its back wall bears a mural almost completely faded now, but under special light, you can just make out the image, a circle of children holding hands. In the center, a flame, and beneath them, in faint Latin script, non ludent custodiet. They do not play, they keep. You walk a little faster now, not because you're afraid, but because you've seen enough to know that this place isn't merely abandoned. It is holding, and for now, it's still holding quietly. You're walking lower again. You hadn't realized until your ears popped slightly, like they would during a long descent or a deep breath underwater. The fog thickens, but only behind you, curling gently against your back like it's sealing the path. Ahead, something catches your eye. Not movement, just geometry. A circle, just visible through the mist. Stone, low to the ground. You move toward it slowly. It's a well. One of the old kinds, stone-laid, dry-stacked, no roof or pulley, just a ring of time-worn blocks. The top is smooth with use, the way only centuries of palms and buckets could polish stone like this. You peer in. It's deeper than it looks. The light doesn't reach the bottom. There's no smell of water, no moss on the inner rim, and yet it doesn't feel abandoned. It feels held. You glance around. No bucket, no rope, no tools, just a small, flat stone to the left of the well, worn in the middle like someone once sat there often. You lower yourself onto it. It's warm. You know by now not to be surprised. You lean slightly over the edge of the well and listen. No echo, no drop of stone, just silence, thick and total. And then, not sound, exactly, but pressure. You feel it in your sternum, low and steady. Not threatening, just present. You whisper a word. Nothing in particular, just sound. It disappears before it can echo, like the well took it. You sit back. There's a tradition in some rural Welsh villages. documented only in private family notes, that certain wells weren't meant for drawing water. They were listening posts, places to release things the village didn't want carried on the air. Confessions, grief, warnings, not to a god, not even to the land, just into something deeper. The wells weren't for drinking. They were for quieting. You reach for a pebble and drop it gently into the dark. You count. Nothing. Not even the suggestion of impact. It should unsettle you, but it doesn't. You place the rest of the pebbles in a circle beside the stone. Someone else did the same, long ago. You can just make out the indentations in the dirt where other hands have knelt, other knees have pressed. You rise. Circle the well once. There's a marking carved on the far side, low, nearly at ground level. A spindle, worn nearly smooth, but still visible. There's a whispered theory among a very small number of field historians that spindles weren't just symbols of craft, but of containment. Not cages, but closures. That you could wind something into thread. Not metaphorically, literally. A memory, a truth, a silence. And that if you needed to hide that thread, you didn't bury it. You lowered it, tied to a stone, dropped into the only place that would keep it. You step back from the well and realize your hand is clutching something. You open your fingers. A ribbon, faint gold, soft as sleep. You don't remember picking it up, but you don't let it go. Not yet. There's movement behind you. Not steps, not rustling, just a shift in the fog's weight. You turn slowly. The path ahead is clearer now. A trail marked by low stones, set at rhythmic intervals. Almost musical, like notes on a staff, spaced just so. You follow. As you walk, you begin to hear something underfoot. A sound too light to be your own steps. You stop. It stops. You walk again. There it is, so faint you think it's imagined. A second footfall, matching yours. A beat behind. You don't look back. Instead, you speak softly, barely above breath. I see you. Nothing answers, but the rhythm falls into sync with yours, as if that's what it was waiting for. You walk side by side with something unseen, not unwelcome, just quiet, like the village itself has chosen to walk with you now. The stones lead you to another clearing. This one is smaller. At its center, a round slab, set flush with the earth. You brush away moss. Inlaid into the stone is a ring of metal, iron, tarnished almost black. A single groove runs through the middle. You've seen this before. Not here, but in an old manuscript illustration, Italian, early Renaissance. A monk drawing out silence like thread, pulling it from a spinning wheel and winding it around a circle of stone. Silencio in forma. Silence, given shape. A final spool. This village did not fall. It was spun shut, thread by thread, bell by bell, memory by memory. And now it sits beneath itself, intact, waiting, not trapped, not buried, held. You place the ribbon in the groove. It fits, perfectly, as though it has always belonged there. You step back, and for the first time, you feel it. The village sees you, not as a stranger, not as an intruder, but as a thread that didn't pull wrong. You sit on the edge of the clearing, let the fog settle around you, and listen to nothing, which is exactly what this place wants. The fog begins to thin again, not clearing, but shifting, like curtains drawn to the side rather than lifted. You walk slower now, not from weariness, but out of quiet respect. There's something different in the air. The quiet is no longer passive. It listens with you. You come to a low ridge, barely a rise, and as you crest it, you see the building. Stone again, but lighter. Not a home, taller than the rest. No door on the front wall, just a narrow gap where the wood would have once been. The roof is partially intact, and the window frames are empty. No glass, no shutter. Just apertures where light once moved through stories. A schoolhouse, maybe, or a scriptorium. You pass inside. There are no desks, no benches, no altar. Just long, low tables built into the stone itself, and alcoves carved into every wall, like shelves meant to cradle scrolls or bound folios. Most are empty now. But in the farthest alcove, half in shadow, you find a book, wrapped in cloth. You hesitate, then unwrap it gently. The leather is smooth, too well preserved. The stitching tight. The pages thick and softly curled. The kind of care that implies intent, not accident. You open it and pause, because the writing doesn't look like ink. At first glance, it's black, faded in some places, but intact. But as the light shifts, you see it catch something metallic, just a flicker. The word shimmer. Like thread. You tilt the page, and there it is, gold, silver, black interwoven. Writing, yes, but woven. You touch it lightly. It's raised. Not ink at all. Thread. These pages were embroidered. Not for art. For protection. There's a long-forgotten technique, mentioned only in the personal notes of a medieval French archivist, in which certain texts, especially ones containing delicate instructions, were stitched, not penned, to prevent decay and ink blur. The practice died out, mostly because it took far too long. But some believe thread held memory better than ink ever could. You flip to the second page. More thread, more shimmer, but the language shifts. This isn't just Latin or Middle English. It's a hybrid of glyphs and looping lines, the kind you've seen etched into the well and basin stones. A language of shape more than speech. And you realize, with sudden stillness, that this is not a journal. It's a pattern. Instructions. The same way a weaver would track warp and weft across a complicated design. Only here, the threads spell moments. You run your fingers down the columns. Every now and then, a word emerges. English, maybe, or something like it. Root words. Words for silence. For bell. For thread. For not yet. You sit against the wall, the book in your lap, and let the light shift again. On the third page, something changes. A fold in the cloth. A stitched symbol that repeats 3 times. Once on the edge of the page, once in the center, and once just above a line of gold thread too bright to age. It's the symbol you saw by the sealed room. The spiral. Only here, it's pierced by a single vertical line. A break. Or a decision. You lean back. This isn't a record of what happened. It's a guide for how it was done. This whole village wasn't just paused. It was patterned. Not sealed shut like a tomb, but closed like a book. A choice made deliberately, written and rewritten in silence. And then you notice something else. The final page is blank, but not truly. If you tilt it just right in the low light, you see faint impressions, thread that was removed, or thread that hasn't been stitched yet. A page left open, not to finish, but to wait. You close the book softly, and for a moment, you imagine the hands that made it. Not just one person, a circle, a group of skilled fingers stitching story and silence together across the years. Not to tell the tale, but to make sure it didn't come undone. There's a phrase, half remembered from a footnote buried in a Norwegian codex. Det som ikke blir lest, men husket med handen. What is not read, but remembered by the hand. You place the book back into the cloth, tuck it carefully into the alcove, and step away. You're no longer trying to understand. You're simply bearing witness. Outside, the fog has gathered more thickly at the edges, as if waiting politely. You walk out, and as you do, you notice a new path. One not made of stone or earth, but lined with thread. Black, strung low between wooden stakes no higher than your knee. It's leading you. Gently. You follow. And after a while, you feel something different in your step. The path is soft again, but not mossy, not damp, just woven. The ground beneath you is laced with old cloth. Ribbons, maybe. Sashes. Strips of fabric so worn they've become the earth's new topsoil. You wonder if every step is being recorded. If each motion makes a note in the pattern you've only just begun to read. And somehow, that thought doesn't feel strange anymore. It feels right. Like you've been added. Not as a warning. Not as a threat. As a line. One more strand in the loom. The village doesn't feel forgotten. It feels complete. And completely quiet. The path of thread doesn't break. It simply vanishes. One moment it's there, laced between the stakes. Then, without warning, it's gone. Not cut, not torn, just absent, as if it was never there at all. You stop, retrace a few steps, squint into the mist. Nothing. The stakes have thinned out too, fewer and farther between. And then, none. But you're still on a path. Of sorts. Not one of soil or stone, but texture. The ground beneath your feet has changed again. Firmer now, more solid than the mossy hollows, but with a strange give, like compacted fabric or layered parchment left too long under pressure. You walk slower, and then you feel it. The rhythm is wrong here. Something beneath your boots is pulsing, but not like before. Not that warm, steady breath of quiet villages and stitched memory. This one skips, jerks. The silence falters, like a thread tugged too tight, then left slack. It feels brittle. You stop. Ahead is a low, wide structure. Round, like a threshing floor or a dance circle. Half stone, half timber, sunken into the ground. It's ringed with posts. 12, each about chest high, carved with repeating patterns, lines, dots, and broken spirals. You've seen those before, but never like this. Here, the spirals don't return inward. They fracture at the edges, like something started to form and then turned away. Inside the ring, a pedestal, just one, flat-topped, with a slab of dark slate leaning against it, like a door set the wrong way round. On the slab, an object. At first, it looks like a basket, but closer, it's a bundle. Wrapped, cloth folded tight, stitched shut with coarse black thread. Something within it pulls gently at your eyes, like a shape you're not meant to recognize. Not dangerous, just wrong. It hums, not loudly, a tremor in the stillness. You don't touch it. You just walk around the pedestal. Once, twice, and on the third turn, the humming stops. But the silence doesn't return. Instead, a sound. Low, wet, like a reed pulled from mud. You freeze and listen. It doesn't repeat. You approach one of the posts, fingers tracing the broken pattern. The groove is shallow at first, then deepens suddenly, as if the carver's hand slipped. The spiral cracks, and below it, scratched hurriedly into the wood, barely visible. Undone. Do not pull. You step back. Your eyes scan the ring. Every post carries a different error, a different fracture, and something dawns on you. This is where the pattern went wrong. Not fully, not fatally, but enough. Enough that they tried to fix it. This ring wasn't built with ceremony. It was built with urgency. A sealing circle, not to hold power, to catch a mistake. You crouch, press your ear to the ground. There's a low echo beneath the soil. Not movement, breath. And you feel the rhythm again, skipping, stuttering. It's not malevolent. It's misaligned. The village, for all its care, missed a stitch. And when they did, something frayed. There's a story whispered in footnotes, half dismissed, rarely printed, that some communities practicing deep ritual weaving would keep a shadow ring. A place to absorb errors, to take on the weight of a misstep, so the main pattern wouldn't suffer collapse. These rings were always hidden, buried, forgotten on purpose, but this one was left just close enough to be remembered. You rise. The wrapped bundle is still humming, barely now. You don't unwrap it, but you notice the edges of the cloth. They're stained, not with blood, not with soot, but ink. Mulberry ink, a rare blend used in certain monastic circles, chosen not for legibility, but for longevity. It doesn't fade. It binds with the page, but it also bleeds if pressed too hard. And here, it's bled through the wrapping. A word visible now. Echo. You blink, then step away, because this isn't a message. It's a remainder, a ripple from whatever misstep was made here. And it wasn't erased. It was folded in, intentionally. There's an argument, one only found in correspondence between two 19th century ethnographers, that the point of village rituals was not to prevent error, but to contain it beautifully. That a pattern with no flaw cannot breathe. And perhaps this was the breath. The single missed stitch that lets the cloth remain alive. You leave the ring slowly. You don't look back. Not because you're afraid of what you'll see, but because you're afraid the bundle might stop humming if it sees you leave. The silence on the path resonates. Steady, familiar, and this time, when you walk, your footfalls sound right. As though the pattern, with all its faults and folds, has recognized you not as a threat, but as a reader, someone who walked its full shape, and understood that even stories need space to break a little. You notice it gradually, that you've looped back, not to the beginning, not to the place where your boots first touched stone, but to something adjacent, familiar, a path that almost matches the one you walked before, a second stitch beside the first, parallel, but not identical. It brings you higher, just slightly. The air is drier, the fog lighter. You can see outlines now, shapes, even edges. Ahead, a rise. Low, flat, covered in moss. You step up onto it and realize it's not a hill. It's a roof, partially buried. The structure is wide, stone walls still mostly intact. An open space just ahead where the collapse has pulled the ceiling inward. You step carefully, no resistance. The structure allows you in. Inside, a floor of fitted slate. Pale stone, rubbed smooth. Empty, but not blank. Edged lines curl across it. Loops, spirals, and straight cuts, shallow and worn like the remains of chalk under rain. You step further in, and from this angle, the lines begin to connect. Not randomly, deliberately. You've walked this shape before. You are walking it. This is the village. Not a plan, not a drawing, but a pattern. Laid flat, spun once, pulled tight, folded inward. And here, at its center, a circle of raised stone. A stool. No ornament. No writing. Just a place to sit. You do. And then you see it. There, in the cracks of the floor, between etched spirals and broken lines. Thread. Actual thread. Looping through tiny eyelets in the stone, some frayed, some taut, some barely visible until the light shifts just right. They connect corners of the room like constellations. Black, red, and a single one gold. You lean forward, breathe out softly, and the thread moves. Tightens. Responds. It's been waiting. Not for action. For presence. And here you are. You remove your gloves. Press your fingers to the stone. The warmth is immediate. But this time, it's not the earth. It's held. Memory, perhaps. Stored in the way certain types of stone cling to heat long after the sun is gone. You've read of limestone altars in Italy that remember every hand laid on them. Still warmer, where people prayed centuries ago. This stone feels like that. Held breath. Preserved touch. You trace one of the threads to its end. It disappears into the floor. No resistance. No sound. You do the same with the next. And then the third. Each time, it vanishes, absorbed without fanfare. Until you reach the gold. You hesitate. It gleams faintly. Unlike the others, it's looped around a small spindle, tucked beneath a stone lip. Not hidden. Just waiting. You pick it up. It's light. Warm. You don't spin it. You don't pull. You just hold it. And with the weight of it in your palm, you understand something final. This wasn't a disappearance. It wasn't a curse or catastrophe. It was a folding. The kind done by design. By pattern. Not to erase. To protect. The people of this village didn't flee. They didn't perish. They placed themselves into the pattern. Thread by thread. Object by object. Story by story. Until they became the fabric of their own land. Not metaphorically. Not in folklore. But literally. You are sitting on it now. The final cloth. Folded once. Set with care. And left here for someone who could walk the shape and not break it. Someone who would understand that patterns are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be carried. You let the spindle rest. The gold thread doesn't pull. It just glows. You sit a moment longer. Then rise. The room exhales. Light catches in the grooves of stone like the final shimmer on a pool before stillness returns. You leave the building without a sound. Outside, the air is still. You walk the last stretch of path without direction, because now, The direction is behind you. The story has been woven. The shape complete. The village has not been found. It has been read. And now, the cloth closes. Quietly. Not to end. Just to rest. You're walking again, but you don't remember starting. The ground beneath you is soft, blanketed in something warm, like thick wool beneath bare feet. There's no wind now. Only the breath of trees holding still, the kind of stillness that listens back. Somewhere in the air, something faintly sweet lingers. Lavender, maybe, or old paper. You follow it without thinking. The sky above you has no color. Not black, not gray, just the quiet tone of closing eyes. You pass a low stone wall, then another. The spaces between them barely matter. They're not fences. They're reminders. Of shape, of rhythm, of hands that once built slowly. The fog rises again, not with weight, but with ease. It touches your arms like warm fabric. You pause by a tree, its bark smooth, its trunk wide enough to lean on. You do. The wood accepts you, as though someone has leaned here before. Many times. Your breath fogs the air, and even that feels soft. Like something is catching it before it can disappear. A single light flickers in the distance. Not a torch, not a star. Just a glow, like a candle in someone else's window. You don't need to reach it. It's enough that it's there. The ground beneath you rises slightly. Enough to lie down, if you wished. So you do. The moss is warm. The air hums low and steady. Somewhere behind you, the spindle rests. Untouched, unwound, waiting. And all around you, the pattern holds. Not tight, not trapped, just gentle. If this tale kept you company tonight, let me know where you drifted off. Have a good night.